You're already likely familiar with the notion that a dollar in the US, a US dollar, is not necessarily equivalent to one currency unit in another country, say 1 euro. And so if you were traveling to that country and you were holding dollars and you needed to exchange those dollars into euros, you'd say, well, how many euros am I going to get for my dollars? Or if you were a European and you had a certain number of euro and you said, how many dollars am I going to get for my euros? You would be thinking about the exchange rate. And it's not just about if you're a tourist or you're traveling. It's also very important if you're an importer or an exporter. If you make, say, cars in the United States where all of your costs are in dollars, but you're selling them in Europe where you're getting your money in terms of euros and then you have to convert them back to dollars to pay your costs, well, the idea of an exchange rate matters a lot. And so first, let's make tangible what an exchange rate even looks like. And there's many different ways of representing it. The first thing to appreciate, if someone says, what's the exchange rate for the US dollar? Your next reaction should be with regards to what other currency. So if I said, what's the exchange rate of the US dollar with respect to the euro? You could express that as 1 US dollar, US dollar, is equal to how many euros? And at the time of this video, it's actually 0.87 euros. Now, another way to express this is 1 euro. 1 euro is equal to how many US dollars? And if you know this first equation, you can figure out the second one. You would essentially just divide both sides by 0.87. If you divide this by 0.87, you get 1. If you divide 1 by 0.87, you're going to get approximately 1.15. And so at the time of this video, 1.15 US dollars is equal to 1 euro. Or another way to think about it is, if you took $1.15 in the US and converted it to euros, you would get 1 euro. And there's other ways of expressing it. You could say, what is the price of a US dollar? So price of the US dollar in terms of euro. In terms of euro. So this is how much would it cost to buy 1 US dollar in terms of euros? Well, you could just look at this over here and you could say, well, 1 US dollar is going to cost 0.87 euros. Or you could say 0.87 euros per US dollar. And if you were to go the other way around, if you wanted the price of the euro, price of the euro in terms of the US dollar, well, that would be the other way around. 1 euro would cost $1.15. So this would be 1.15 US dollars per euro. Now, with all of this out of the way, let's actually do some calculations. Let's say that there is something in the United States that costs 20 US dollars. Let's say this was made by someone in Europe, so when they sell it for 20 US dollars, they convert it back to euro. How much euro would they get when they convert this $20? Pause this video and see if you can figure that out. Well, if 1 US dollar is equal to 0.87 euros, then 20 US dollars is going to be 20 times as many euros. So we could say $20 times 0.87 euro per dollar. This symbol right over here is shorthand for euro. And so you are going to get, let's see, that would be approximately 17.40 euro. And if it went the other way around, let's say that there was someone who sold something in Europe for 20 euro, and for whatever reason, they need to take that euro back into the United States and convert it to dollars. How many dollars would they get? Well, here we see 1 euro is equal to 1.15 US dollars. So here you would say 20 euro times 1.15 US dollars, dollar per euro. And so what is this going to be? This is going to be 20 times 1.15, which is going to be 23 US dollars. 23 US dollars. Now, another idea, a related idea to this, is this notion that currencies can appreciate and depreciate. So let's say that the euro appreciates, and it always matters relative to something. So you say relative to the dollar. So if the euro appreciates relative to the dollar, come up with an exchange rate that would show the euro appreciating relative to the dollar with this as a starting point. So one scenario where this is happening is if this was where you are starting, 1 euro would now be more US dollars, more than 1.15 US dollars. So you have 1 euro would now be equal to, maybe it's equal to $1.20 now. So it's now equal to $1.20. Now, if someone said the dollar appreciates relative to the euro, then it would go the other way around. That might be 1 US dollars is now equivalent to 0.9 euros, or maybe 1 euro, or 1.05 euros. And similarly, if someone says that the euro depreciates relative to the dollar, that's another way of saying that the dollar has appreciated relative to the euro. So this could be a situation where if the euro is depreciating relative to the dollar from this place right over here, 1 euro is now equal to fewer dollars. So maybe it's now equal to $1.05. And with this as a starting point, this would also be a situation where the dollar has appreciated relative to the euro. So I'll leave you there. This is a primer on exchange rates. It can get a little bit confusing because you're talking for the price of a currency in terms of another currency. But I encourage you to keep thinking about things. Keep doing these little thought experiments in your head and thinking about, okay, if a euro is equal to more than $1, if something's worth a certain number of euros, it should be larger. It should be a larger number in terms of dollars. Similarly, if a dollar is less than 1 euro, if something costs a certain number of dollars, it should be a smaller number in terms of euros.